Hi there, and welcome back to the Convergently Speaking podcast. Today the topic is making the unconscious conscious. This is actually one of my all-time favourite topics. And it kind of undergirds the whole way that I see and interact with the world. Neuroscience has been trying for many years to comprehend exactly how much of what is happening in our brain is actually known to the conscious mind. Now, there's no consensus on this topic, but generally speaking, it's upwards of 90 to 95%. So if 95% of our brain is unconscious, what our brain is up to is unknown to us, then I think it makes sense to be at least a little bit curious with what's actually happening in that part of our brain. I'm not sure if you've ever had the experience where you're going about your normal daily business and all of a sudden a piece of information, a thought, an idea, maybe even a solution, comes to you almost out of nowhere. I like to think of that experience as being our unconscious mind deciding in that moment that it needs to give us that piece of data to make it conscious, that it needs to give that piece of data to our conscious mind. For whatever reason, I've always been fascinated ever since I was a child with the more obscure or unknowable or unseeable phenomena. And I think that the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind, as some call it fits into that. And what I never realized when I initially became interested in personality psychology, which was through the gateway drug of the Enneagram, was that it was fascinating to me because it was helping on two fronts. Firstly, it gave me language to explain some of the deeply held intuitions and observations that I have about people and how they work and operate and why they do what they do. But I also realized that this system was essentially giving me 9 different patterns or systems or methods that we see at work within people's psychological makeup. So here I'd stumbled across a tool which was literally trying to help us make the unconscious conscious, trying to get to the heart of why we do what we do. And for me at that time, why I do what I do. And it was tremendously profound and also powerful. Now, I'm actually wanting to do a podcast or possibly even a series of podcasts on the Enneagram quite soon. So as for my personal story and journey with that, I'll leave it as a bit of a cliffhanger for the moment. What I've come to realize over time as I've learned and engaged with a whole number of maps, models, different systems, personality systems, but also systems that just help us understand human psychology, is that these tools exist and continue to be broadly useful to people because they're more sophisticated ways of grappling with human psychology, trying, always failing, but trying to get as close as we can to understanding both ourselves and others. Because I think if we're honest, we all do a level of stereotyping. Even those folk that really resist personality systems that say, I don't want to be put in a box, or I'm the exception to the rule and these systems never work for me. I think even those people in their more honest moments know that if somebody walks into the room wearing certain clothes or with a certain hairstyle or with a certain stature or body language, that even they can jump to stereotyping. I don't think stereotyping is inherently good or bad. Rather, it's the way our brains work. Our brains need to take shortcuts when trying to see and understand and interpret all the data that comes to them. So the way I've started to look at these systems is a more tried and tested form of, I don't really want to use the word stereotyping, but sort of like a level up to the stereotyping that we do on our own. When you're taking a way of conceptualizing a person and lots of other people are engaging with that system and it organically grows and evolves, it develops a level of sophistication that, neither you or myself can develop, in an isolated way just inside of our own minds. And so for me personally, this is why I love these systems, because I love seeing the unconscious made conscious. And so if there's a system or a tool or a strategy that's out there that can help make me more awake to my real and genuine motivations, help me understand the mechanisms that are going on for those that I'm working with, whether it be in my mental health work, whether it be in my coaching practice, or whether it be just in my personal life, then I'm most likely going to be interested in learning and applying this system, at least giving it a good look. And that's a lot of the motivation and drive behind this podcast and a lot of what I do. Learning these systems and then handing these tools on to help others essentially be able to be their own therapist. Going back to the topic of the unconscious, the character that often comes to mind when I think about this is Carl Jung, who was a psychoanalyst who is pretty infamous, pretty well known within the psychology field. And I just love this quote of his, which I want to read to you. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When we're going about our day, our life in an unconscious manner, doing things where we're just reacting out of learnt behaviors or traumas that we've experienced and that kind of thing, not only do we not realize why we're doing what we're doing, but as the world gives us feedback, we won't be able to see and observe the role that our actions have played in that system that's creating that feedback. The classic example is that friend that you have that believes everyone's always out to get them, everyone's always mean to them and rude to them, that they're just a person that has bad luck. And as an outsider, it's not hard to see that the common denominator is that person. And they're actually acting and reacting with the outside world from unconscious mechanisms at work. So literally things at work that they're not aware are there, are present. And we all do it. And we all do it every day. And honestly, we probably all do it, on a minute-to-minute basis. But like I discussed in my free will episode, the more that we can kind of dig into that stuff, dig into that content, and start to understand our particular way of interpreting the world, interacting with the world, our particular formation and identity of self and who we are, who we see ourselves as, the more that we can choose and make decisions about how we respond and show up in the world, the way that we act in the world. And ultimately, we'll have better relationships with our families, with our friends. We might lose some relationships and gain some newer, healthier ones. We'll be able to get closer to our very core passion and purpose in our work, because we'll actually know what's driving us. We'll actually know what gives us life, what is draining, what we're not motivated by. And we can become a happier and more content person. And hopefully, ultimately, a person that has more meaning in our life. So that's my little personal philosophy on the unconscious. It's something I'm endlessly fascinated by. And it's the motivation and the driver for me when I'm banging on about all these different maps and models. It's not the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or spiral dynamics or any of the other models aren't an end in themselves, but rather I see them as tools, and useful tools, to help us understand ourselves better and to become better people, to heal our trauma and to love others more effectively. So thanks for listening today and joining me on this episode of the Convergently Speaking